What if laziness does not actually exist? What if the thing you call laziness is only the surface? A simple label for something much deeper underneath. People love to say they are lazy when they cannot start. They say it after wasting hours on their phone. They say it when the room stays messy for another day. They say it when the task keeps getting pushed to tomorrow. And every time they say it, it sounds like a confession. I am lazy. I am weak. I just do not have discipline. But maybe that story is too simple. Maybe laziness is not the real problem at all. Maybe laziness is the word we use when we do not understand resistance. Because your brain rarely avoids action for no reason. It avoids action when something feels unsafe, unclear, painful, or overwhelming. A task may look simple from the outside, but inside your mind, it can feel completely different. It can feel like pressure. It can feel like judgment. It can feel like possible failure. It can feel like proof that you are not good enough. And when your brain senses that kind of emotional danger, it pulls away. Not because it hates progress, but because it wants to protect you from discomfort. That is the strange truth about procrastination. It often feels like doing nothing. But inside your brain, something very active is happening. Your mind is calculating the emotional cost of starting. What if I fail? What if it takes too long? What if I look stupid? What if I try and still cannot do it? Those questions do not always appear as clear thoughts. Sometimes they appear as tiredness. Sometimes they appear as distraction. Sometimes they appear as suddenly needing a snack. Sometimes they appear as checking one message. And somehow, one message becomes 40 minutes. That is not random. Your brain is choosing the easiest source of relief. The task creates discomfort, and the phone removes it instantly. The room feels overwhelming, and scrolling feels simple. The project feels uncertain, and a video feels predictable. Your brain loves predictable rewards. It loves comfort that arrives fast. It loves anything that reduces tension right now. The problem is that short-term relief creates long-term pressure. You avoid the task, so the task becomes heavier. Then the heavier task becomes even harder to start. Then you feel guilty for avoiding it. Then guilt makes the task feel even more threatening. And the loop begins again. Avoidance creates guilt. Guilt creates pressure. Pressure creates more avoidance. That loop can trap even smart and capable people. So when someone says they are lazy, ask a better question. What are they actually avoiding? Because laziness is often fear wearing comfortable clothes. It is fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of effort, fear of being seen trying, fear of discovering that you're not as capable as you hoped. Sometimes people avoid starting because starting creates evidence. If you never begin, you can still imagine success. But if you begin and fail, the fantasy becomes vulnerable. That is why some people protect their potential by never testing it. They would rather be called lazy than feel exposed. Because lazy sounds temporary. Failure sounds personal. This is why perfectionists often look lazy from the outside. They're not avoiding work because they do not care. They are avoiding work because they care too much. They want the first attempt to be clean. They want the result to match the image in their head. They want to avoid the ugly middle part of learning. But every real skill has an ugly middle. Every good idea begins messy. Every finished project passes through a stage where it looks stupid. Perfectionism hates that stage. So the brain delays the beginning. It says we will start when we feel ready. But ready is often just another word for safe. And safety never arrives before action. It usually arrives after repetition. Another reason laziness feels real is exhaustion. A tired brain does not always announce itself honestly. It does not always say, I need recovery. Sometimes it says, I do not care. Sometimes it says, this is pointless. Sometimes it says, let us do anything else. Burnout can disguise itself as laziness. So can stress. So can sadness. So can boredom that comes from having no direction. When your mind is overloaded, even simple tasks feel heavy. A sink full of dishes can feel like a mountain. One email can feel like a battle. A 5-minute chore can feel like proof that life is too much. And when everything feels too much, doing nothing becomes a survival strategy. Not a good strategy, but an understandable one. This does not mean every excuse is valid. It does not mean action is unnecessary. It does not mean discipline is useless. It means the problem is more complex than insults. Calling yourself lazy may feel honest, but it rarely helps. It gives you shame, not direction. And shame is a terrible map. It tells you that you are the problem, but it does not tell you what to do next. A better question is not, why am I so lazy? A better question is, why does this task feel unsafe? Is it too vague? Is it too big? Is it connected to fear? Is it connected to someone else's expectations? Is it boring because it has no meaning? Is it exhausting because I have no energy left? Different answers need different solutions. If the task is too vague, you need clarity. If the task is too big, you need a smaller first step. If the task feels scary, you need emotional safety. If the task feels meaningless, you need a reason. If your body is exhausted, you may need rest before discipline works. That is why screaming at yourself often fails. You cannot shame your way into a healthy relationship with action. You can force movement for a while, but eventually, the mind starts resisting harder. Because now the task is not just a task. It is also connected to punishment. That is how people train themselves to hate their own goals. They attach pressure to everything important. They attach guilt to every delay. They attach identity to every mistake. And then they wonder why starting feels painful. Your brain remembers emotional patterns. If every attempt begins with self-hatred, your brain learns that action hurts. If every failure becomes humiliation, your brain learns that trying is dangerous. If every goal becomes a courtroom, your brain learns to avoid goals. It lowers the threat around the task. And when the threat feels smaller, action becomes easier. The opposite of laziness is not always discipline. Sometimes the opposite of laziness is safety. Sometimes it is clarity. Sometimes it is energy. Sometimes it is permission to begin badly. The first step should be almost embarrassingly small. Not because small steps are magical, but because small steps bypass the alarm system. Your brain may resist writing an entire essay, but it may accept opening the document. It may resist cleaning the whole room, but it may accept picking up 5 things. It may resist a full workout, but may accept putting on shoes. It may resist changing your life, but it may accept 2 minutes of movement. Small steps matter because they create proof. They show your brain that starting does not destroy you. They turn action from a threat into an experience. And experience teaches the brain better than motivation does. Motivation is unstable. It comes and goes. It depends on mood, sleep, stress, and environment. But systems can survive bad moods. A system says, make the first step obvious. A system says, reduce friction. A system says, remove the phone from the room. A system says, prepare the space before the moment of decision. A system says, do not wait for your brain to feel inspired. Because your brain will often choose comfort when comfort is easy. That does not make you weak. It makes you human. Humans are built to save energy. For most of history, saving energy was intelligent. A creature that wasted energy could die when food became scarce. So the brain learned to conserve effort whenever possible. Modern life turned that ancient instinct into a problem. Now the easiest rewards are everywhere. Food is easy. Entertainment is easy. Scrolling is easy. Avoidance is easy. And meaningful progress is usually slow. Your brain is comparing fast pleasure with slow reward. Of course, fast pleasure often wins. That is not a moral failure. That is a design problem. So if you want action to happen, design the environment. Make distractions harder to reach. Make the first step easier to see. Make the task smaller than your resistance. Make the reward closer. Make progress visible. Your brain likes evidence. It likes seeing that something is moving forward. Even a tiny check mark can change the feeling of a day. But do not confuse productivity with worth. You are not valuable only when you are useful. You are not allowed to rest only after perfect performance. That belief turns life into a machine. And eventually, the machine breaks. Rest is not laziness when it restores you. Avoidance is different. Rest gives energy back. Avoidance usually drains energy while pretending to protect it. Rest feels clean afterward. Avoidance often leaves guilt behind. Learning the difference is important because some people need to work less, and some people need to stop running from one specific task. Both can look like laziness from the outside, but they're not the same problem. This is why judging people as lazy is usually lazy thinking. It ignores fear, stress, burnout, confusion, trauma, environment, and incentives. It turns a complicated human pattern into one ugly word. And that word rarely creates change. Real change begins when you become curious instead of cruel. What am I avoiding? What emotion appears when I think about starting? What is the smallest version of this task? What would make this feel 10% safer? What would I do if I did not need to do it perfectly? These questions open doors that shame keeps closed. They give your brain something useful to work with. And once you understand the resistance, you can work around it. Not by waiting for the perfect mood, not by becoming a different person overnight, but by making the next step easier than the escape. That is how momentum starts, not with a dramatic transformation, but with one small action that proves the story wrong. You're not lazy. You are often scared, tired, overwhelmed, unclear, or undersupported. And sometimes you're simply choosing comfort because comfort is easy. That still has consequences. But consequences are easier to face when you stop turning them into identity. You can take responsibility without attacking yourself. You can admit avoidance without calling yourself worthless. You can build discipline without building self-hatred. That is the balance most people miss. Compassion without excuses. Responsibility without cruelty. Progress without pretending the brain is simple. So maybe laziness is a lie. Not because people never avoid effort, but because the word laziness explains almost nothing. It is a label placed on top of fear, confusion, exhaustion, and protection. And once you look underneath the label, the problem becomes workable. You do not need to defeat laziness. You need to understand what your brain is protecting you from. Then make the first step small enough to survive. Again and again, until action stops feeling like danger and starts feeling like trust.